Hey there, I'm Foley Freeman, and I'm beyond excited to kick off your journey into Imprint Short Stories, where we dive into thrilling, captivating, and original tales. Brace yourself for an electrifying adventure, because today's story is an absolute game changer. Now sit back and enjoy The Accidental President.
Dr. John Emmanuel Belleh was once a cattle farmer in Gutphi, a town in the heart of Utterland. He faithfully paid his taxes and treated his workers fairly, never cheating anyone or taking more than his fair share. His life was an open book, exposed to scrutiny by all. Much like Samuel, the biblical hero, he often stood before his workers and community saying, "My fellow men and women, please tell me to my face, in front of all these witnesses, and the name of Almighty God if I have wronged any of you. Listen to me, my people," he continued. "I have lived among you all my life. My children are friends of your children. My wife is a trusted friend to many of your wives. Have I given you any reason to complain against me? Have I ever deprived anyone of the fruit of his hard-earned labor, cheated or oppressed you? Have I taken what I didn't sow? Have I disregarded or ignored your legitimate complaints? Speak up now. Pour out your hearts before God and man. If you can't say it to my face, write it down or whisper it to a trusted neighbor who shall speak to me. I implore you to speak your truth today. I won't hold a grudge against anyone who speaks his heart, whether for or against me. If anyone can prove I've stolen or taken a pin that did not belong to me, I will refund any ill-gotten gain eightfold, doubling what the biblical Zacchaeus promised." Dr. Belleh waited, but no one came forth, not even after he challenged them the fifth time. For this reason, Dr. Belleh's reputation engulfed his community like wildfire. Soon he ascended to the highest office as head of the Cattle Association in his local community. Within a year, he assumed the leadership of the entire district. Before long, his reputation spread to every nook and cranny of Utterland. Eventually, he became the head of the National Cattle Association of Utterland. This association tasked him with lobbying the national government to secure subsidies aiming to bring fairness, equity, and justice to cattle farmers in Utterland. Before he came to power, less than 10% of the population owned more than 90% of the potential grazing land, leaving many cattle farmers struggling to feed their animals. This uneven distribution of farmland caused many to operate at a loss. As a result, their children often went to bed hungry on cold winter nights. Dr. Belleh stepped up to the challenge. Within 3 years, the government granted favorable subsidies to cattle farmers and implemented a land redistribution program. A third of the redistributed land went to cattle farmers. Under his leadership, the number of cattle farmers tripled. So, also did slaughterhouses and cold chains. Thanks to his achievements and strong ties with the biggest national labor association, Dr. Belleh was nominated as the standard-bearer of the Congress Party. The Congress Party, the second largest political entity, threw its full support behind Dr. Belleh, showcasing his remarkable achievements as head of the Cattle Association as evidence of his ability to make Utterland a prosperous nation. The citizens of Utterland gave him their endorsements and votes. Upon ascending to the highest office in the land, he launched sweeping reforms. He provided free education, affordable housing, and nursing homes for the aged. He regulated the pharmaceutical industry and overhauled the social security system by increasing payouts and keeping retirees active and productive. He even provided free health care to pensioners. In a speech to the National Retiree Association, he asked, "Why should a 65 to 75-year-old citizen sit home and wait to die if he is still active and productive?" He doubled the minimum wage of retirees for the same work. Within 4 years, Utterland's prosperity indicators soared. GDP and per capita income increased by at least 18%. Crime rates, convictions, imprisonments, homelessness, and unemployment all plummeted to the lowest level Utterland had seen in 4 decades. People felt safer walking the streets at night. School enrollment increased 100-fold. Adoption rates went to the roof. Utterland achieved its highest ranking on the Well-Being Index in its history. The nation achieved political stability, and its markets thrived. Utterland transformed into a tourist destination, a fun place to be. The skilled labor force expanded, as did the number of educated individuals with access to capital. The country adopted transparent business practices, witnessed technological advancements, and improved its digital infrastructure. Most importantly, Utterland became a global powerhouse. Dr. Belleh, Utterland's respected leader, forged stronger international alliances, leading to a surge in exports. He secured numerous positions for Utterland in international organizations, including the United Nations. All opinion polls indicated Dr. Belleh was poised to win the next election. The general population was delighted and ready to grant him another 4-year term. However, opposition emerged from corporate entities, the military, law enforcement agencies, and lobbyists. These groups, with various names and motives, united to create the Multi-Purpose Alliance for Democracy, or simply A4D. Dr. Belleh's administration made an ambitious proposition to outlaw lobbying. The administration argued that lobbying cripples society through external pressure to institute bias in legislation in favor of a privileged few. It also undermines democracy, fuels corruption and bribery, and encourages excessive spending on campaigns. On the other hand, the Alliance for Democracy contended that lobbying was free speech guaranteed by the Constitution. While that battle rages, the pharmaceutical industry resisted reforms, claiming such reform would stifle investment and entrepreneurship. The military and its allies vehemently opposed budget cuts, especially after Dr. Belleh successfully negotiated a 6-point peace treaty with former adversaries. This plan included a freeze of all wars for the next 3 years, enhanced international cooperation, reduced armaments to protect the planet, promoted morality, recognized national sovereignty, and encouraged increased international travel and exchanges with nations once considered enemies. The A4D, with the expressed endorsement of media and corporate entities, labeled these moves as dangerous appeasement and a threat to Utterland's future and national security. Many studies supporting the stance of A4D sprang up. They were all conclusive that Dr. Belleh was leading the nation in the wrong direction. Academics and journalists joined forces in criticizing him. Nonetheless, the lives of ordinary people continued to improve. Many ordinary citizens disagreed with the claims by the think tanks and opposition that the country was headed in the wrong direction. However, their thoughts and opinions remained private. Not a single Utterland citizen had died in a war in 3 years. The economy thrived, successfully eliminating homelessness. These positive changes were apparent to many. Yet the opposition to Dr. Belleh continued to snowball and gather steam. The press became frantic. It painted him as a monster who did not know how to govern the country. Dr. Belleh did not take this opposition lightly. He fought back hard and sought support from the everyday people. When the political pressure mounted beyond his control, he called for a referendum to rid the country of vain ideologies, corrupt politicians, and corporate greed. The referendum considered banning or reforming lobbying, regulating the recycling of personnel between the government and the weapons industry, and reducing the export of weapons that fueled senseless wars around the globe. Dr. Belleh emphasized that weapons should be solely for defense, not politics and tools to gain unwarranted influence. The referendum was a resounding success. It bolstered Dr. Belleh's political standing. He used this momentum to push his agenda for global prosperity. This agenda focused on the fight against climate change and strengthening international cooperation. Dr. Belleh quadrupled funding for the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, aiming at net zero carbon dioxide emissions by 2060. He also increased support for nations threatened by climate change and artificial intelligence. In a speech to the United Nations, he exclaimed, "For years we've used most of the Earth's resources to develop weapons to kill and wipe out our common humanity. As we do so, we inadvertently heat our homes and threaten our existence. Every nation worldwide must provide for scrutiny of the carbon footprint for its military activities. We've had over 30 United Nations climate change conferences, yet its disastrous effects loom. How can we call ourselves civilized when we waste scarce and valuable resources, perfecting the art of human destruction, while millions of children go to bed hungry at night? Why should the majority of us die needlessly from curable diseases in the abundance of cures? Tell me, why should more than half of us wallow in wanton poverty, while the privileged few, without commensurate effort, live in affluence? Why should we turn this world into a jungle where only the fittest survive? We must make a turnaround through our good examples." In collaboration with partners, Dr. Belleh established a working group representing significant contributors to global warming. The group devised strategies and plans to cut greenhouse emissions by 5% each year for the next 10 years. The world was united in the fight against climate change for the first time. However, within his own country, opposition intensified. Many, including his advisors, urged him to implement the cuts gradually over 10 to 15 years, citing potential economic repercussions. Dr. Belleh disagreed, arguing procrastination exacerbated the threat posed by climate change. Within a year, all nations had embraced Dr. Belleh's vision. Even former adversaries pledged to follow his lead, offering more generous concessions than Dr. Belleh had anticipated. Dr. Belleh became an international hero abroad. He was even nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. But at home, he was fast becoming a pariah, a man destined to sell the soul of his nation. A barrage of criticisms of the mainstream media continued unabated. The Patriot newspaper accused him of dining with the devil. The Founder newspaper labeled his brokered agreement on climate change a pact to annihilation. The Evening Post claimed he sold the soul of the nation. Citizen Forum newspaper alleged that Dr. Belleh had auctioned the country's national security to the highest bidder. Some of the accusations against him had nothing whatsoever to do with his current role as the head of state of Utterland. Some dated as far as his high school prom. One female student died from a drug overdose. Even though Dr. Belleh was exonerated, the Founder newspaper claimed it had uncovered new evidence that suggested the contrary. A witness who testified in the case against Dr. Belleh confessed that she lied under oath due to harassment from Dr. Belleh's lawyers. The second event concerned the alleged love affair between Dr. Belleh and his sister-in-law some 28 years prior. Although Dr. Belleh, his wife, and sister-in-law denied the accusations, various versions were kept on life support by the media and his critics that flourished by the day. Per the newspapers, he was the worst of humankind. Religious, women, right-wing, and human rights organizations joined the fray and ran with the version of the story that suited their purpose. With paid ads in major news outlets, Dr. Belleh's reputation was shredded. These messages played from Sunday to Monday, from morning to noon for months. Unpleasant news about Dr. Belleh seemed the only item worth reporting. Countless experts and pundits who seemed as informed as any citizen painted doomsday scenarios if Dr. Belleh's policies continued. Organizations and other groups within the opposition grew increasingly vocal, despite Dr. Belleh's substantial support among everyday men and women. Soon, he was under investigation for various crimes, including sharing intelligence and technology with nations considered perpetual enemy nations. However hard he tried, his approval ratings began to slide. Initially, these downward approval ratings did not trouble Dr. Belleh. He dismissed it as a paper rating, for he was certain he was still in the hearts and minds of the ordinary men and women on the street. He knew this because the people thronged him when he visited them. Chipon was the young man vying for Dr. Belleh's job. He was in his mid-40s and virtually unknown to the majority of people of Utterland. Soon, his pictures filled the streets of Utterland. His youthful face beamed from the top of every billboard with the slogan, "You are my charge, I am your future." He was portrayed as the angel who descended from heaven without a past. The little known about him was glorious. His achievements previously unknown were put on the same pedestal as the history of the land. His philanthropic work and his brilliance in 3 fields, namely jurisprudence, international relations, diplomacy, and military strategy, sprouted into existence. In his first televised speech to the nation, he shared his dream for the people of Utterland. He promised to annul Dr. Belleh's 6 pacts. In their stead will come his own 6 pacts. Only his will be more monumental, more glamorous, more impactful. On day 1 of this resumption of office, he would stop the hemorrhaging of Utterland's resources to other nations. He would withdraw Utterland from all treaties and agreements that drain the valuable resources of Utterland. This includes a commitment to support climate change initiatives. To restore Utterland to its former glory, he would establish the Workers' Rights Promotion Pact, Free Education and Healthcare Pact, Jobs Guarantee Pact, Social Security Pact, and Utterland Restoration Pact. The Workers' Rights Promotion Pact would guarantee workers fair compensation for their labor. Worker rights to organize and unionize will be encouraged, protected, and guaranteed by appropriate laws. The Free Education and Healthcare Pact would guarantee every citizen of Utterland the right to free medical care and education from the cradle to the grave. The Jobs Guarantee Pact would ensure that all eligible citizens have priority to safe, high-quality jobs. The Social Security Pact would provide adequate retirement benefits and unemployment insurance for all workers. Chipon reiterated that functioning Social Security would remain one of the linchpins of Utterland's development. The Utterland Restoration Pact would deliver the highest possible infrastructure through schools, roads, airports, and telecommunication facilities. The people of Utterland cheered as these words broadcast throughout the land. With help from the media and think tanks, the people concluded that no person in the history of Utterland had come close to the vision Chipon espoused. Reminiscent of the biblical David and Goliath, Dr. Belleh has slain his thousands. But Chipon was ready to slay his tens of thousands. The media continued to paint the glamorous picture of the utopian Utterland would become when Chipon's 6 pacts came to fruition. It campaigned vigorously for his ascendancy to the highest office in the land while discrediting the works of Dr. Belleh. Gradually, the people shifted to the vision of Chipon, wanting more than Dr. Belleh could provide. His achievements did not measure what Chipon, the new savior of Utterland, had promised. He would take away all their troubles, woes, and glooms. Intense protests led to Dr. Belleh's removal from office despite his confirmed solid 55% approval rating. Chipon was finale at the reins of power. He spent the first year blaming Dr. Belleh's policies and telling the people his grand plan to dismantle the failed political architecture of Dr. Belleh. Meanwhile, cost of living, life-saving drugs, and school fees skyrocketed. The bridges remained broken, joblessness increased, inflation galloped, and industries collapsed like a pack of cards. When tension mounted on Chipon, he launched his audacious 6-pack plan for Utterland. This plan, however, remained a pipe dream. Yet, Chipon's approval rating soared, thanks to his strong rapport with the media and lobbyists. The media elevated his every word to a prophetic level. It encouraged the citizenry of Utterland to exercise restraint and give Chipon more time to deliver on his promise. They asserted the failings were not his, but Dr. Belleh's long-term damage to the nation. But soon the people could take no more excuses. Their voice grew louder and louder. Some craved the nostalgia of the past. Others hopeful things would improve. But nothing changed. The difference intensified, the chasm deepened and widened. One day, as the dissatisfaction with Chipon's leadership reached a boiling point, a grassroots movement began to emerge. Ordinary citizens, inspired by Dr. Belleh's legacy, decided that enough was enough. They organized peaceful demonstrations, town hall meetings, and open forums to express their concerns and discuss the direction of their beloved Utterland. As the campaign for the referendum gained widespread support, the media, influenced by the groundswell of public opinion, shifted its focus. It began to provide fair coverage of both sides of the debate, allowing citizens to make informed decisions about the future of Utterland. Eventually, the citizens, Chipon and Belleh, agreed that the best way to save Utterland was to have another election.
If you enjoyed this story, then hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so that you do not miss the next story in this series.